somebody who was asking for gas did you at a gas station or whatever, and like I was like embarrassed and I said no. I lied.
Oh, John, I'm so sorry.
And went on. I was like, we're live.
Yeah, we're fine.
Okay, what do you know about Ukraine?
Cranes can hold with their with their hooks. They can hold like metal, like heavy metal with their hooks.
Okay, what do you know about the country Ukraine?
I don't know anything about that.
Nobody else in America does either. All right, bud, go on. Hi, and welcome to the Jonny Random Show. This is the reboot of the show. It's going to be a little bit different format today. We're just going to do a weekend review. We're just talk about big stories. And at the end of it, if you will put comments on things that you want to talk about for next week. So let's say you don't watch this until sometime during the week and you're like, oh, this is going on this week. I want them to talk about it. Just drop it in the comments and we will discuss it next week. The biggest news topics that I was following this week was Ukraine, what's going on with Whoopi Goldberg and Joe Rogan, sort of like people getting canceled. And what was the third thing I told you guys? I don't even remember what it was now. Yeah, yes. So let's begin. So it'll come to me in a second. We'll get through to it.
The stock market declined.
Oh, well, yeah. Stop.
It's because it's such a ongoing thing.
Yeah, it's on simmer and it's just sort of like slowly cooking. So
exactly.
Yeah. So the economy, cancel culture, and Ukraine and go play upstairs. All right. I'm sorry. You got to go outside or upstairs or something. Entertain yourself.
I was like, is it warm enough down there for him to go outside?
Yeah, it's actually like 50 something degrees. So,
oh man, I'm so jelly.
Yeah,
it is so cold.
Yeah. So, all right. So, starting in, I guess where we could start with is the sort of slow burn of the economy. I was watching. I usually in my office, I keep the Yahoo News or Bloomberg News or whatever, kind of keep cycling between it. And so I kind of watch what's going on. And this week is pretty generally overall bad news. And the last month really has been bad news for anybody for portfolios in the stock market. And I will say that I have a video back in October about inflation that Matt, you and I did. And where I sort of predicted we're going to have a recession. I don't know exactly what I predicted, but at least a sort of supply chain crisis where it was going to affect negatively the stock market. And I said it was going to happen end of January, middle of February, or early March. So we're in February right now. So, right. And it looks like sort of part of my prediction is coming to fruition. Some of the things I didn't anticipate was the asset bubbles that you have in tech and the
China's real estate bubble is also affecting things.
Yeah, we didn't really track that in that episode. So there's a lot of things, but I think I mentioned at one point during the thing, it's like a death by 1,000 cuts, and we're about 990 cuts in. So we only got a couple more cuts left. And so I feel like that's kind of where we're at. We're just sort of inching closer and closer. And I do suspect by March, or at least the end of the year. And the reason why I give those two things, and you guys can react to this in a second, the reason why I think that it could be either in March or by the end of the year is because it's sort of like we're losing steam in the economic, it's sort of like the trust in everything is just going to be all right if we just, keep weathering this. And then once that sort of negative energy starts feeding on itself, then there's a more rapid decline. So it's either going to happen or people are going to say, okay, kind of, all right, leveling off. And then I think by the end of the year, so sort of a two-part prediction. If it doesn't happen in March, I feel like we're going to have a real economic slowdown by the end of the year. But I think it's just because, things doesn't look like the fundamentals underlying are there for the growth because of the economic slowdown, the supply chain crises that we've had. I think it's just going to continue to maybe flatline or stabilize a little bit. We might have a jump, through the summer, and then by the end of the year, I think it might tail off and might have a very dark November. That's just my sort of thoughts on the economy right now. What do you guys?
Curious, since one of your topics is Ukraine.
Yeah.
If we go to war with Ukraine, what
We're not going to war
with them against Russia, not with them,
Right?
What would that do to the economy? Do wars help us, or do they hurt
The
us?
answer is yes. It depends on what sector you're talking about. There are a lot of sectors that are immediately helped by the war efforts, materials, because right now we've sent a very small number of troops to the general vicinity, like Germany and a few other places. We've not really put troops close by, so we're not going to be hit with the manpower drains, but we're already getting hit with resource upticks where there's more demand than there had been for hardware. So I think immediately we're going to start seeing some actually staying power, most likely from the new military orders. So that's my thought there. But once the morale sets in of war, then that'd be a thing. But I'm not even sure. I don't think that Russia's going to war. I really don't. But yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, we can talk about that in a minute. But if we did go to war, as far as the economy is concerned, my overall take is that where you kind of we'd see maybe like a increase for a little while, because everybody's like, oh, ramp up for wartime. This is good for our economy, is bad for, like the world, but for, the, investors' point of view, like, there might be some opportunities there to invest. But I do think by the end of the summer, all of that's going to disappear. And I think that the rhetoric is going to be very, very negative, because we are in an election year. So it's, the midterms is going to drag everything into the mud. I think you're going to hear a lot about like, okay, we went into a lot of it depends on how it's going in Iraq too. But I don't see a lot of.
You mean
Ukraine, sorry. Wow. Yeah. It depends on how it's going in Ukraine, but I don't foresee it being a very easy in and out, win situation and then go home. And, that might, be good. But I don't necessarily predict that. And so I think by, like I said, the end of the year, this could be back to where we are, but maybe even worse, because we just went through somebody else's war.
As far as the economy, I think it's very unpredictable, because we have a president that is not very decisive.
Right.
So he gives these false, messages, and then doesn't do anything, or he does something really weird kind of thing. And so, we don't even know, what this is about, where we're going to go. So obviously you're not going to have Congress's backing for it. It's going to be a presidential war, and it's just going to be, it's going to be a mess. So I don't see it helping us,
right,
at all. I think it's just going to be further distrust of our government, and I think it'll drag our economy down that much further, give us excuses for then the government reaching its hands into our pockets for stabilizing, economy and we have this crisis. Not that we started this crisis or anything, but now that the crisis is here, let's do something radical,
I do think it would be an excuse to scoop the economic, I really feel like my thought on whether we're going to have a war in Ukraine with Russia depends on how the stock market goes. I mean, I really do. That's kind of odd, but I do think that will be a factor. I don't think it'll be the only factor, obviously, but I do think it will be a major part. And then it's funny that you say, like, my take on Biden is he's kind of like the opposite of Trump, but it has a similar effect. Trump would just say, hey, if you attack, we're going to bomb you, and destroy you, obliterate you off the face of the planet. And people are like, I actually believe he would do that. So let's just talk a big game and back off, whereas Biden's like, well, if they do this, then we're just gonna, attack with, a little bit, whatever, if they do that, then we'll just go full ground war. It's kind of like just sort of sleepwalking into it, it's sort of like when he laid all the cards out there and everybody's like, oh, you can't tell the enemy what you're gonna do, and then it's kind of like, but I think the fact that he did, and he really meant it, I think he really spoke his mind. If Russia does this is what we're gonna do. If Russia does that, then that's what we're gonna do. If they just sort of kind of invade, we're just gonna kind of attack back. It's gonna be, but I think that's where he really is. So it's kind of, it's weird that it's the same thing where you actually tell the enemy what you're gonna do, because that's what you actually would do. Whereas I think that's one of the problems with the Obama administration was he was so smooth with his words and not going to give anything away and whatever, and then the outside world kind of viewed it as weak, so we're just going to take advantage of that. And then he didn't do what he said he was going to do, because he was never actually true with so I think that like Biden maybe has a little bit more credibility because he's half dead anyway, that we I don't know.
That's a good analysis. I like that. I think you're right. I think he will do what he says. I'm just wondering
how effective that'll be.
Yeah, how effective it'll be. Whether he's really leading. Is anybody going to follow him?
Yeah,
kind of thing, because he doesn't know how to get people on board.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Now he's clearly really bad at that. But there are other leaders in Europe that are going to be. See, right now, what we're fighting is a sanction war or a Cold War, similar to the buildup with the Cuban Missile Crisis. It's very similar to the Cuban Missile Crisis, as a matter of fact, because Russia is hitting very close to home at Europe, and Europe is, with the threat to their natural gas supply. They're really seeing some problems. So basically, there's a ramp up. They're starting to impose sanctions on each other. What could tip the scale in Russia's favor is something of a rogue card that we don't really know about. I think they're less likely to invade with their army. You put the army there, you make that a big threat, and then you cripple the enemy's economy. So they can't do anything until you are ready to walk in. But that's most likely what they're going to try to do. So I found out that, first of all, China and Russia are really good at the virus and hacking and bots game. They're getting really good at that. And I think there's been some soft tests, even some of the things that have like taken hostage the large companies and hospitals. Those ransomware viruses are kind of getting practice, getting a feel for what you can achieve with these viruses, these computer viruses. I think the next move is going to be sometime in the next few weeks, a cyber attack to see what they can take out without putting boots in Ukraine.
I mean,
how that
maybe
what happens there, like you said with the stock market, what happens there will determine which way the war goes. But I think they're much more likely to do that. They cannot handle an all-out war with America, and America can't handle an all-out war with Russia, China. That axis is not gonna work for us.
Right, which is why I almost think that they might not actually do anything. They might wait for the next election, because I feel like at the beginning of every administration, there's this testing of the administrations. Mm-hmm. And I think that what happened in Afghanistan, I think Russia saw an opportunity, and, but I think that when, in my opinion, I think he kind of got the okay, we know exactly what they're going to do. There's no, ambiguity here with the Americans. So I think they don't want to fight us in an all-out war. I don't think a traditional war would be good for the Russian economy. So, and, thinking about Putin, since we full transitioned, into Ukraine here, from the stock market, I was thinking about it the other day because somebody kind of used an analogy of Putin and his love affair with Ukraine. And I was thinking, Putin's like that really like clingy boyfriend who's like dated this girl a long time ago, and he's like stalking her, like, you want me back, and she's like, no, I'm done with you since the 80s, whatever, I'm moving on. I've got other friends now. Or if I don't have other friends, or if I just want to be on my own, I'm going to do that, back up, Russia. And it's like, but you love me, you love me. And I feel like America is like that cousin, that really weird, quirky cousin who's like a veteran of some war like a long time ago, and he's like, if he bothers you again, I'm gonna come over there and sit out on your front porch with a shotgun, and if he does anything, I'm gonna blast him into Timbuktu. And Ukraine is just there like, can everybody just calm down, please? Like, Russia, you just leave us alone. I don't want you back. I'm just doing my own thing. And America, why are you talking like this? And then like all of her girlfriends are like, the EU, and then all the EUs like on the phone, like, hey girl, whatever, like, whatever. I don't know. It's just my analogy that I thought of.
Yeah, no, we're talking about the boyfriend raiding the homeless shelter, or the shelter.
No, he's sitting outside like honking his horn, like, girl, come on out. I'm here.
No.
It's a show of force. It's like a manly show of force to get her to choose to come back to him. He wants Ukraine to be a part of the motherland, but he's not going to invade. He's not going to go in the house because, they call the cops or whatever, start World War III. He doesn't want to do that, but he wants her to come back on her own. He's like calling out to her and be like, say I got this big truck and I'm revving it. That'll impress you, sending all these troops on the border because I really love you, Ukraine. That's what he's saying. That's my take on it.
He lived too long in the South.
Maybe. I don't think that Russia is going to invade. I really don't think. I think they're going to let America do that, and then they would respond. I don't think that they are that stupid. And I think that originally they were that stupid, but it was a test to see if, hey, can we do this? Is anybody going to interfere? And then America starts piping up and doing, all we're doing. And it's kind of like, yeah, I can't do that. But, I really want you, Ukraine. Like that's my overall take. I think that war could happen if America's economy starts crashing and they are looking for an escalation. And what scares me the most is a bunch of 18-year-olds on the border, 100,000 troops, whatever, in the middle of winter, sipping vodka, whatever, and somebody fires off a gun, and somebody over here, the NATO forces are like, they're attacking us, and like, because I think that would start a war, like more faster than any actual war happened. Both sides think the other person's attacking, and it's really some drunk soldier, like some 18-year-old out there, on patrol, doing dumb
there was
stuff.
a time that could happen. I don't think that an accidental discharge is likely to cause a war, because we're looking at the possibility of two superpowers going to nuclear war. The second guessing on war has gone way up since the nuclear factor, since the nuclear factor, not factory, since nuclear has been a factor. Everybody,
I think you're right, but if the climate is there that initially there's a firefight, neither side is claiming they started it. Both sides are claiming the other side started it. If you don't want to go to war with a nuclear war superpower, it's going to get sorted. Both sides are going to come out with official things. It's going to de-escalate. If our economy is in the toilet and they want to go to war, then you can spin the story to say the other side started it and then use it as a launch point, and that's what I think is my biggest fear. I think it can in that situation, but I don't know.
Yeah,
I think you're underestimating the fear that anybody who actually knows what capabilities nuclear powers have, because nuclear submarines that China, Russia, Great Britain, I'm not sure who else has them. The submarines that we have can be anywhere, unknown, skulking around. Nobody knows where they are. All they have to be is within a small distance of the surface, right? A few hundred feet of the surface, and they can launch their missiles without surfacing that can go so high and then come in at such a tight trajectory, and spread so wide because they're cluster missiles. We're talking about atomic bomb warheads that are multi on each rocket. So one rocket going out can hit so many different targets. That is terrifying.
Right. I don't think either side is going to use that. That's the thing. I don't think either side is going to resort to it. I think if America was attacking Russia, like a legit war against each other, but this is a proxy state. This is over Ukraine. America's not going to shoot nuclear warheads in Ukraine at Russia. There's no reason for that.
But if America is involved in a war against Ukraine or not against Ukraine, well, against occupied Ukraine is what would end up being. So if America were in a war against occupied Ukraine, because they could take them very quickly, 70% of the Russian military is on the border of Ukraine right now. We have a couple thousand troops in the general vicinity. So if America ever gets involved in this war, it will be very late in the conquering of Ukraine. Ukraine will not stand a chance. It'll be done. And then America will be trying to take it back. Again, that's why I'm like, this could all go down so quickly that America may not have a chance to react because we're not building up ahead of time. And then if we were to continue that war, then it is full out threat of nuclear counterattack by the Russians.
Okay. Well, I think we've gone to worst case scenario.
I know. I'm just saying that. I'm just saying that it's there. Yeah. That's why nobody wants to start this, because if it were to go that direction, then that's where it ends. Yeah. That's why nuclear powers have not engaged in direct combat. They've always been in proxy wars since.
Yeah, and I think this is a proxy war. I don't think it ever comes down to this directly. I guess where
Russian forces going into Ukraine. If we do anything, it'll be against Russia.
Under the flag of NATO. I mean, and I don't think Germany doesn't even want to go to war with, whatever. No. Germany is like, hey, you can have Ukraine. What else do you want? Belarus, whatever. I mean, just keep our oil coming, our natural gas. Keep that pipeline, pipelines going. We don't care about the rest of this.
Just don't push me to the locker again.
Cheap fuel, we don't care about this. So let's just debate real quick, and then we'll move on to the last topic, which was cancel culture. But just real quick, what do you guys think of? Do we have any business fighting a war in Ukraine in the first place? Yes or no, and then why?
That requires nuance, but yes. I mean,
okay.
Do we have business doing that? If Russia is going to try to put together the old
on
USSR,
what basis do we have to defend Ukraine is what I'm asking.
Promise, the promise of the people that we would defend her from her former overlord,
which I don't think we made. We haven't promised every country on the planet that we're not going to. Ukraine's not in NATO.
Okay, well, that's a factor.
Ukraine, that's so to play the history out. A couple months ago, Russia said, we want you to promise that you'll never include Ukraine in NATO. Mm-hmm. And America said, we're not going to promise that because they can join if they want. And Ukraine is like, well, we don't want to, or we don't not want to. We just want to be ourselves. And Russia's like, well, every year, United States gets more powerful and keeps pushing closer and closer to our borders. And there's all these neutral countries in between. And you keep allowing these other countries to join NATO. And by their estimation, coaxing and working behind the scenes to try to get them to join, and you're trying to get Ukraine to join NATO when NATO doesn't want to. So that's where I use that like boyfriend, and girlfriend analogy. It's like he's like, look, let her be alone. Let us let her come back to Mother Russia if she wants to come back to Mother Russia, or let her be her own self. But I want a commitment from you, a written commitment that you're not going to have her join with you, because that upsets the balance of power in Russia. And America's like, she can do what she wants, whatever. Like, we're like that really weird cousin that's like just really way too involved in this, thing. Now, I don't know how true it is, but like there's a report that said like 50% of the population of Ukraine identifies more Russian than anything else. So you're talking about a group of people that if, in a couple elections, they could like, hey, you know what, let's join back with Russia anyway. The demand, wouldn't be out, out. It's like that mixed girlfriend that like, mixed feelings, of like, yeah, maybe I should get back with him, but like, maybe I should just be on my own for a little while,
Well,
so like,
here's the thing.
But anyway, yeah.
Ukraine has to continue to have leverage, and that's what she didn't have when she was a part of the USSR. The Ukraine has a lot of farmland and other resources that Russia wants. They need it.
She already took Crimea.
I know. So that's what I'm saying is like that was a port on the Black Sea, that was trade, but now they need the farmland because arable land in Russia is a real issue. So they could, as long as they can continue to trade with each other, mutually benefit. But if she ever loses her independence, then she'll be exploited. She's been there. So
and
that's,
what?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. But what does that have to do with America? Let's get that in here for a second here, because I'm curious.
Yeah, I'm kind of like saying we don't really have any place there, and unless we're asked to be there. And even there, it's got to be a nation that has strong, a strong commitment to freedom and sort of has the resources. It's, in these situations, so many times we've helped countries that didn't want help, or didn't have the ability to, the foundation to really have a free government, type thing. So it's kind of like picking your fights. It's just sometimes it's not worth it, and I don't see any clear reason to go there at all.
So I'm going to mediate, because I think you said that we don't have really a legitimate reason to be there. It's not like the population is just crying out for freedom, and it's not like their people are like just culturally centered on democracy. They're comfortable with the idea of Russia in the sort of communist system or socialist system, and at least 50% of the population, and culturally they tie more in with that. So it's not like we're really setting them free, so to speak, or whatever, or giving them that freedom. And so, so that's your general position, sounds like. And then Matt saying that because they're in Europe and they have this farmland and we don't want to give Russia the balance of power, we don't want to have them. Okay, so what is your argument? I'm sorry,
it is not that the interests of Europe have anything to do with the farmland. It's that Russia has a huge interest in taking that farmland, and when they do it, if Ukraine is independent, they can make sure that it's a fair trade. They can negotiate, but if they are overrun, then historically Ukraine has been leached from. So that what I'm saying is, for Ukraine, as long as they can remain independent from Russia, they can be a great trading partner because they're needed. But if they are ever absorbed, they're going to have their resources raped, essentially. It's going to be bad, and it has been. Russia did that to Ukraine.
Fair enough, but the stated position of Russia was that we're only putting these troops there, and we're only putting this here as a show of force and to show that Ukraine, that we are serious about them not being coerced into joining NATO. That's the fear. That's the stated fear from Russia and from Putin. Real or not, we can debate that. Mm-hmm. But real or not, that is their stated reason for being there and putting troops on the border, is because Ukraine and the government of Ukraine is a lot more, we want to be an independent country. Whereas the population of Ukraine is a lot more, whatever, we're basically Russian anyway, aren't we? I mean, like, what does the population of of Ukraine care if they're in NATO or in the Soviet Union? They want to do go on with their lives. So the fact of the matter is that if we try to get Ukraine to...
You forget that Ukraine recently left the Soviet Union, recently left being exploited, and actually under relative freedom of their own government has been doing pretty well.
Right. And so I stand by them being an independent nation. I think that's my position, is they should be an independent nation. But I think that we could also see that you don't have to be a part of NATO for us to support you in being an independent nation. And I think that we could not put in writing, because I don't think that we shouldn't vow to Russia, be like, oh, you want us to write down that we'll never go, make Ukraine, a part of, NATO? Well, okay, we will do that. I don't think that that's warranted, but we can say, I don't think it's hard to say, like, hey, we don't want Ukraine to be a part of NATO. We don't care if it's a part of NATO. We really don't have a lot of interest in that area of the country. Whatever, that's fine. Relax, Russia. Get your troops off the border. We're not doing that. That's not our position. That's not our stated goal. And I'm going to tell you that. And I'll tell you that every time. But I'm not going to write that in a document, somewhere. And what I think it was, who was it? There was some Secretary of State, some years ago, that said that NATO was not going to advance any further east than it already was. And that's not a policy position. But that's just generally been the position of America, except for lately when we started actually trying to get other nations to join. It's like, so we said we're not going to expand NATO any further, because the point of NATO is this balance of power in Europe, and then we're like, well, we're going to recruit these other countries, and Russia's like, hey, you said you weren't going to expand. Stop expanding. Don't leave Ukraine out of your little plots. So I think we can, to me, that's the only way forward, peacefully forward, is outside of just giving it time and just saying, like, if you do this, we're going to shoot, we're going to shoot back, if you do this, we're going to, and then hopefully that deters, force deters force. So, but anyway, I guess final thoughts before we move on, because we're, kind of lingering on this topic.
If that were Russia's goal, then Russia is not succeeding. Here's why. Ukraine sees 70% of Russia's army on the border. Do you think that do you think that they, sitting in Ukraine, are thinking, oh, this is just them trying to keep NATO out of Ukraine?
Have you heard the Ukrainian government tell the United States, hey, stop sending troops over here, stop escalating the rhetoric? Because I have.
Okay.
Ukraine said, hey, if you keep sending troops to us and putting them on our border and sending all these NATO forces close by us to defend us, then Russia's going to keep sending forces, and both of you guys are going to fight in my cities and destroy all of our people and our economy. Please stop. You stop. Everybody stop. De-escalate, please. That's what the stated, at least last I heard from Ukraine, that was this week sometime, I heard the president, and of course it was translated, so, said, please, America, stop escalating the situation. And then 2 days later, I think we sent 3,000 more troops over there. And it's like, great, we're not even listening to Ukraine. And Ukraine is the one we're defending. We're defending a country that's asking us to stop ramping up the rhetoric. It's bizarre, but, I don't know. And I think Putin looks at that and goes like, Ukraine doesn't even want you here. That's why I use the analogy. We're that crazy cousin who's sitting on the front porch, with shotgun shells, like, we're going to do this, whatever. Go back inside. I'm going to keep you safe. Can you go home? No, I'm not going to go home. I'm going to sit here and protect you. That's why I use that analogy.
It's so funny, because that's what everybody was so afraid Trump was going to do. Trump was going to start World War III. He was going to just ramp up and just keep challenging people, and people were going to take him up on the fight, and the U.S. was going to some country somewhere, that was That was the fear.
North Korea.
Yeah, North Korea. That didn't happen, and now we're on the border of that happening with this. But no, I don't think that sending troops in the amounts that we have makes any sense, because we could send 3,000 very quickly anyway. So like 3,000 is nothing. So sending troops over there is not doing anything. It's escalating it for no reason, because we could quickly get thousands of troops over there, men and machines. You know, we don't have to escalate in order to actually respond.
Right.
And it's too little anyway. If something were to happen, we wouldn't be able to do anything with 3,000, 6,000, 9,000 people on the ground.
Only reason we should do anything, in my estimation, further than what we've already done is if Ukraine expressly ask. There has never been a time in history, to my knowledge, where the country that looks like it's about to get invaded did not ask for help, did not ask for anything. Hey, we're about to get Ukraine. There's 10,000 people on. Okay. Please help us. You know, that has been the historical, like, hey, they're getting aggressive. Does anybody, want to help us? Like, but in this case, that's not the case. So, but we just assume that every country on the planet, when something is about to happen, that they want our help. Like, I think it's weird. But Dad, I'll let you give the departing thoughts on this, and then we're going to go to switch topics here. If you have anything to add, if not, it's fine. We'll move on. But
well, my parting shot is time will tell.
That's true.
And, you're looking at the economy maybe affecting it. You're looking at, other factors, in there. So, time will tell.
Yeah. All right. Well, now the fun one. So Whoopi Goldberg she got, I think, 2-week suspension on The View for making saying that the Holocaust wasn't racially motivated, that it was just bad people doing bad things to other people, and it wasn't really a racial thing. And this week also, Joe Rogan came under fire. Why did he come? I can't remember what the original issue is, because it seems like it just keeps like,
it was COVID and
supporting people who might be related to bad
misinformation.
Ideas. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so I'll just sum up my thoughts and then let you guys I don't know, like, if you guys have any thoughts on that. But the fact is that, like, Joe Rogan, and I never used to listen to his stuff until probably this year. And then even then I just listened to like select, episodes, whatever. He's had a couple of guests on Ben Shapiro. I listened to one with like Graham Hancock, because he talks about the younger Dryas, whatever. Like, it's a lot of crazy stuff. It's just interesting. It's just 3 hours of conversation. A lot of stuff just comes out and is interesting to talk about, and so, but I'm not a regular listener, but I've listened to enough of his content to know kind of like where he's coming from and how he's kind of like, the central ethos of his show that I like is, we should be able to just talk about our ideas, put out ideas. And if it's bad, then the people listening will be able to hear that and be able to decide for himself, this guy's crazy. He literally said this, but that doesn't line up with what I think, how, the world works. And his arguments aren't compelling at all, and if you only do that for 20 minutes, then you really don't get a sense of who this person is. But when you talk for 3 hours, you get a sense of, wow, this person doesn't know what they're talking about. And they're saying this information, and that doesn't add up. He's had some guests on there where I've listened to like half of the episode, and I'm like, this person is nonsensical. Like, it's unintelligible to like listen to this person. But I appreciate the fact that he just always pushed back. Anyway, that's my thing, my thoughts on Joe Rogan and the whole, we've had this conversation about cancel culture in the past. Joe Rogan is not a perfect individual, but he has apologized over and over throughout his career and throughout his life for things that he's done that, or said that weren't, acceptable, or he said this and it was in this context, and he can see now how that was, not a good thing to do. And I'm sorry, whatever, and move on. And so, we were talking, in our episodes on cancel culture, that was kind of the theme that we came to, is like, there has to be an ability to say, I'm sorry, and then move on from that. And so in the case of Whoopi Goldberg, I think it's the same. Well, she came back and actually doubled down on her position, that like, it wasn't about race because they're both white people. The Jews were white and the Nazis were white and they killed them, and it wasn't racist. It was just, I don't know I don't exactly understand the full, extent of her language, of her thought process there. But to her, it couldn't be racist because they were both white, and in her worldview, I think that racism can only exist based on how dark your skin is. So, if you're more brown, the more racial things can happen to you, is more racist. If you're light brown, then, you may get some racist, but not as much racism. And if you're white, you can't, no one can be racist against you. You're privileged. So, I obviously don't agree with, that. And I don't think the majority of people that, would think through that could, possibly get to that position. But the thing is, she did apologize for those comments and explain them a little further. And she, I think at some point, did say that, she did see how it was racist eventually, but she still doesn't. I guess what she came to is like, kind of like, we're just gonna have to agree to disagree.
Yeah.
But I do see that it's also, I can see how
that
you
it may
would
have been wise to say that. Basically,
I can see how you could think it's racism. I don't think it is. And I'm sorry, for being insensitive. It's kind of how I took her comments and kind of everything there. And so, I guess, first of all, do you think both should be canceled? One should be canceled, not the other? And why? We just talk about it for a few minutes, or just any thoughts you have. Kick it around. Whoever wants to.
Yeah, I was thinking that, the problem comes with what is race. And I personally, I don't think there is a race,
right.
Difference is enough. Yeah, there's differences in color. People see color, and color makes a difference. But there are also cultures, and cultures, I think, make even a bigger difference,
right,
than that. And history comes into play too, because the Nazis saw the Jews as a race, rather than a people group that has certain common bonds or whatever. When in reality, you have Jews that are Catholics in Germany, but because their heritage was Jewish, they end up, being gassed and that type of thing. So the Nazis saw race. They believed in evolution. I don't know if I want to say that Whoopi Goldberg, believes in evolution because she believes in race, but tend to go in the same way. Her problem is she believes in evolution and she believes in race, and that somehow Black is a race, and it's not. And so that caused her problems, because she said Jews are not race. We're a race. But that would make only 2 or 3 races, in the whole world, and we know that that doesn't work out well either. So I think inherently the problem is in her mind is a problem of definition, and that's what she went with, and that's where the Jewish population that went against her also considered themselves a race as well, which is a problem also, and by her definition and by their definition, they both have a definition that says race is something, and they both then clash over that definition.
Yeah.
So I think that's sort of the base of the thing. But when it comes to cancel culture, I think that Whoopi Goldberg and Joe Rogan both deserve the same thing. They need to be heard out. They need to be understood, and then just go on with the life. You disagree with them, you don't. There's some things worth boycotting people for, but it ought to be, kind of like nuclear war. There ought to be more.
Save it for a last option.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be based on an opinion per se. I mean, it should be based on, like I think of like, in my mind, abortion, is a life, and then
what are the consequences of
the consequences. And but an ideology or something like that, I don't necessarily think that, I think that free speech should, it's like the whole thing of like
Rogan is leading people to death. I mean,
right.
Are the facts with him? He has to argue, based upon more than just CNN. But I can see him making a case. If I sincerely believe that Joe Rogan was leading people to death, like I feel that abortion is taking a life, I would try to boycott that opinion.
Yeah.
So I mean, I understand where he's at. If he really believes it, I wish that he would join into the debate intelligibly before he gets to that point. I
think he has, and I think it's more of the critique is on his guest making those statements. And he even said, I apologize for not pushing back harder on some of the guests and some of the statements they said, but he does fact check in real time. He's like, so a guest says, hey, there's this and this and this, and he's like, well, I don't believe that's true. So like they look it up and they pull research, and then this guy says, well, my research is based from that, and they look it up and they're like, they discuss the nuances of, that situation.
Well, I met Neil Young before he pulled the trigger on Rogan. So I was going the other way. And
sorry.
And I think Rogan is saying, I've kind of worked through this, and I'm being held accountable and I'm apologizing. Neil Young saying, disagree, on the whole matter. And thus, I'm going to boycott anyone who sponsors you. And I would be, I agree he has the right to do that, but it's also going to come back, just like it's come back on Whoopi Goldberg. She needs to be held the same accountability that she tries to cancel, and get the same kind of punishment. If she wants somebody completely off and they cannot make an apology, if she's that strong, then, hey, if it's good for somebody else, it should be for you too. You're canceled completely. No platform for you. No Twitter account, no, nothing. It should be the same for her. If that's her take on apologies and how she's treated people in the past, then you bear the same standard. And it might make her a little more cautious, I would think. If she cancels somebody else. Again, I don't know. I don't follow her enough to know how she's treated people in the past. But a few times I've seen her, she just irritates me because she's
so
on that party line,
so mouthy.
And just like hip. And it's like what it's so through a lens of my people are always right, as far as like my side of the argument is always right, and that other side is racist, misogynist, whatever, and it shouldn't even be examined. And so it's, she's sort of the queen of canceling, and it's not getting canceled. So it's sort of ironic. But
only like marginally canceled. That's the other thing. It's not proportional.
Man, that timeout for a kid.
Timeout, and she didn't get deplatformed, not getting demonetized. Nobody's like losing her contract. I mean, Joe Rogan could literally be taken off of, losing his, contract at Spotify, like arguably larger fallout for him monetarily speaking and society speaking. And then, what if Twitter takes him off? Like, oh yeah, he's a spreader of misinformation. Let's take him off, like Trump and all that kind of stuff, as well. So I think that the consequences for the right tend to be more dire. You can fall farther, as far as like the balance of power. But I think that I like what you said. I think both sides should be heard out and examined, and then let the viewer choose. Okay, I'm gonna stop tuning into The View. And do you think The View is going to keep Whoopi? Well, we lost how many viewers after, Whoopi Goldberg made her racist comments, and so we're going to take her off and replace her with a different host and, let sort of the free market, dictate at that point, so, but Matt, what's your thoughts on all this, if you have any? And we were trying to stay under 20 minutes. I haven't really been keeping track, but it seems like we're over.
Not an hour.
Yeah. Well,
seems like we're over.
The first week in review is like not going how I expected, but it's been good. But anyway,
we're getting up there with Rogan time now.
Oh goodness.
I will say that the irony is that we've got two situations with balance of power going on. We've got the Russia, Ukraine, NATO balance of power, and then the other is the culture war balance of power, because and the stock market just falls somewhere in the middle of all this. But the balance of power is between those who believe in classical liberalism versus those who believe in reactionary liberalism, we'll call it. I don't even know if there's a name for it. But classic, huh? Yeah,
wokeism.
Wokeism. Yeah, reactionary gut level. I feel like he offended me, therefore I will take action in order to, because that's the only way. Power to the problem, like whatever the problem is, whatever I think it is, I'm going to apply power to it. I'm going to get a bunch of people on my side, and I'm going to make it right. I'm going to lobby until, so Shapiro is calling for basically, because people have left classical liberalism, which is free speech, the idea that in the marketplace of ideas, if you present information, you try to calm emotions down, you can seek and find truth. So then the truth will come out over time. It may not be immediately apparent, but as long as you're civil to each other, you'll be fine. But the wokeism is leaving off civility. But Shapiro is calling for like measures. So people on the right have been canceled left, right, and center, right? And that canceling has been hugely detrimental. But he's basically saying we need to do the same to Whoopi and anybody else that does something as terribly stupid as what she did, which was, it was. And what's funny is she's half right. She's accidentally half right. But I'll explain that in a second. But he's basically calling for escalating the culture war, so that they can see what it's like to get what they're giving, so make them think about it. But I don't know that would help. And one thing is that I don't know if he's thought about it, but he's really calling for an escalation, and there's consequences to that. I'm not certain that it's going to cause more people to actually return to classical liberalism. So what I'm saying is I'm really not certain. Part of me wants to say yes, eye for an eye. Let's cancel Whoopi. Let's cancel anybody who has done something as bad as what our people on the right have been canceled for, or obviously worse, because it has to be bad by the new definitions of bad. So, and they keep changing. But Whoopi is part right. What I mean by that is that it is bad people doing bad things. She is absolutely right that it's not about race. The Rwandan Genocide was two races of the same historic people group. They looked identical. Outsiders couldn't tell them apart, but they could tell each other apart. There were minute cultural differences that had grown up over a couple hundred years while they'd been occupied by the Dutch, I'm going to say. I don't remember exactly which people group it was.
That's right.
Yeah. So then at some point they had completely separated, and they were landowners and not. And then it became a civil war that became a genocide. It was about killing all of the others, but they were the same race, but they were not. They were two different races. So you can always divide into more and more races. A race is just culture times time. So yes, the Holocaust was about race, but ultimately what it comes down to is people being against people. And it comes down to cultural differences, misunderstandings, and a failure to be what we're supposed to be as human beings, a failure to reconcile. And
I'm sorry.
so she's like half right, but not the way she meant to be. So
I think just to put a bow on all this and wrap it up, I think that, in my opinion, we can't escalate the culture war. I think the culture war, in my opinion, we shouldn't escalate the culture war. I think we should have radical peace, radical de-escalation. And even though we don't have power in society on the right, I think that gives us no legitimacy or no legitimate right to attack back and say, yeah, Whoopi, like, we get what you're saying. We disagree with you. Keep doing the View, whatever you people, keep watching.
Keep doing the View for the 1,000 people who watch you every day.
Exactly. You have whatever your audience is, that's fine. And that's not going to affect me. That's not going to affect how I'm going to, go about my life. And I'm not going to see people that way. I'm not going to see people with race. And I'm not going to see, I think we're all human. I think we're all, created equally. And so I think that we have to be the example. And no matter when we want to fight back. And I think the cultural war is largely a distraction. I think that we have just let both sides of people in power on the right and the left exploit our culture, our civilization. And I think that because of that, there's just so little that people feel like they have any power. And then you just funnel everyone's energy into a culture war. And then that takes over all of our time and all of our energy. And if we just said, you know what, let's simmer down on the culture war and stop ramping up and stop fighting fire with fire, and actually talk about how can we actually policy level and on a ground level, how can we all look at each other the same? How can we improve each other's lives materially? How can we move forward in America and be American? And you can be Democrat, you can be Republican, you can be liberal, you can be radical left-wing, whatever. You can be a socialist here. Like, that's fine. You can be a socialist in America. You're not hurt. Your ideas don't hurt me. My ideas are better. My ideas are smarter. My ideas are so much more helpful to everyone. And then when people hear that, they go, wow, you know what? That's right. That sounds more right. I don't want to be angry all the time. I don't want to be fighting all the time. I don't want to be, I think, love wins. You know what I mean? Like, I think it can win in a large group. And that's all you really need to simmer things down. So I don't think the right should be fighting fire with fire. I don't think that we should be canceling Joe Rogan or Whoopi Goldberg or, and I think that, and I think Dad and I talked about this in one of the episodes as far as solutions. I really don't think we should be boycotting, abortion clinics. I think that we should be lobbying the government to have better policies for adoption agencies. I think the government should be putting in place a system where we can take care of children in unwanted situations. And our society.
You mean protesting? Why would you?
Whatever.
Okay.
Whatever. But I don't think that culture war. I don't think that's where we should be spending our energy. It was outside, marching. I don't think that's that's not as good a use of our time as going to our legislators and saying, hey, what can we do to solve this problem? How can we create an environment where kids can be born and moms who are 16 can actually take care of their kids? How can moms who are 23 and have no economic future. And how can they have a future where they feel like they can keep their kid? How do I create a culture where we value raising kids? How can we do that? I think that is a better use of our time, but that's just time, I don't know, in other things as well, but a little bit broader than that. So, but anyway, anybody have any final thoughts of anything or any other things happened this weekend that you want to talk about, or we'll close us out? No?
Summary.
Okay, doke. All right. Well, thank you for joining me for this weekend review. Again, please put your comments on things that you want to talk about or any subjects that you want us to discuss in the comments of this video. I will read them. And then when we do our next episode next time, we'll address those comments and then talk about everything that is going on. Thank you so much. But do you guys want me to tell you the story about this ring?
Sure.
Okay. So I was getting gas and in the other account. So I was just going to pay for the gas with cash that was in my wallet. Well, I only had $30. So I had a 20 and a 10. And so I'm walking into the store, whatever. And this guy pulls up in this big old SUV and he's got this gold chain on, whatever. He looks like he's from Dubai. He's got thick accent. His kids are in the back. He's like, I'm traveling here and I lost my wallet and I need some gas. And I was like, thinking like, man, I'll buy your gas. So that's fine. Whatever. Here's a 20, And then, so he's like, well, and I'll give you my ring, whatever. And he's like wearing all this jewelry, whatever. He's like, it's $1,000 ring, but I don't have any, my wallet. And I'm like, okay. So I took the ring. I'm like, here, whatever. Here's 20. Here's the ring, whatever.
You didn't
and
believe it
like,
anyway.
No, I didn't care. I was going to help him out,
Yeah.
So then he goes, his wife's, he's like, that's not enough, and I'm like, well, I mean, it's a big car, but I'm like, literally, that's all the cash I got, man. Like, what do you want me to do? Like, and Cammy's in the car. So like, I'm not trying to stand out there and be like, oh, pull over the thing and I'll pump your gas for you, whatever. So I'm like, I mean, this gets you something, like, and, but he wasn't grateful at all. So I was kind of irritated. So I was like, just take this ring back. So I started handing it back. I'm like, man, just take the 20 and take the ring. I don't care. I'm going to help you out, whatever. And he's like, no, I'll keep the ring, whatever. And then I go in the store, whatever. And so instead of getting $30 of gas, I got $20 of gas in my car. And I'm like, whatever, I just need to get through the weekend and on. And then, but then I slipped the ring in my pocket and didn't think about it till I got home. And I was like, wait a second, this guy just gave me a ring. It's probably worth $1,000. And I'm like, I'm thinking like this guy doesn't look like, I mean, he looks pretty legit in my mind. Like he had the look like he's from like some foreign country. He's got a lot of money. He just lost his wallet. So I take it up to a pawn shop. It's yesterday morning and, just take it in there. I'm like, yeah, somebody gave this to me, said it was worth $1,000, and they tested it and they're like, yeah, this is fake. And I was like, oh man,
that's what I thought.
Me. But I was like, I was like, I mean, I would have bought the gas anyway. But like at the same time too, I thought it was funny because he got me because like I legit thought it was real. Like I get in my mind, like I was like, I bet that was real. I mean, that seemed all right, whatever. And so I kind of felt bad that like, it was such a one-sided whatever. He gave me $1,000 ring and I gave him $20. But then at the end of the day, it was fake. So anyway, that's a story about how I got scammed. And Connor was like, I like it. And I was like, you can have it. But so anyway, that's my story about the ring.
Oh, with this ring, IV scam.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things out there, rings that are, that look pretty good until the first time you wash them, and then the diamond looked kind of foggy and
yeah. But like the guy at the pawn shop was like legit, like you didn't get it from somebody who was asking for gas, did you, at a gas station or whatever? And like I was like embarrassed, and I said no. I lied.
Oh, John, I'm so sorry.
And went on. That was embarrassing. Like I thought it was real.
No. Did he said at a gas station?
He legit said, you didn't get it from a guy at a gas station trying to get gas money, did you? Like,
no, so this is a known scam.
Yeah, that's everybody in Smyrna has been that.
Yeah, he's like, this is like going around
with that ring.
Like, yeah, so
and gave the guy $60 worth of gas to fill up his SUV for the $1,000 ring.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so
but
anyway,
you're only out 20. Yeah.